everybody. Hi, everybody. It's the No Name Cinema Society, episode 22, and the first episode of 2016. It's January 6th of 2016, 6 days in. I'm Jonathan Betzler, one of your several hosts here for the No Name Cinema Society. It's the same three guys every time, either for better or for worse. And for those of you that follow us a lot, either on Facebook or Twitter, or you've seen the previous shows, then you might think that this first of my two colleagues is my arch enemy, but it's only partially true. This is Jay Money. How are you, Jay Money? Not really my arch enemy, but the audience feels that way.
I'm not actually presently arching you, but I would consider it in the future if things escalate.
Well, I will. I look forward to that. That sounds really interesting.
As do I. I appreciate having a worthy adversary, JB.
Oh, wow. See, in its own way, that's a little compliment. And playing the role of Switzerland is, as usual, is our colleague Drunk Davie here, who's the only one of us not drinking. Drunk Davie.
How you guys doing?
Welcome back. Happy New Year.
And Happy New Year. And
I say, here's my drink for the evening. I'm doing the beer thing, and Jay Money, I believe you have some Italian champagne of some kind or something?
Yes, the finest champagne, the fake kind.
Sparkling water.
Now it's New Year's.
Did you guys have good New Year's?
I feel like I just spent the whole time watching bad football.
Those games were rough.
There's no good games. It's terrible.
Yeah, and last year was so much better in terms of the college football playoff.
Yeah, I think we'll get a good championship game though. So
I doubt it. So time to talk about Joy, everybody. Joy's our movie for the night, and it's our last 2015 movie that we'll be discussing, at least before the Oscar preview. So Joy is here played by Jennifer Lawrence, is a very put-upon mother of two, who also has a very creative mind to invent things, and she gets the idea for what you can see her here's what eventually becomes the Miracle Mop. And the story follows her journey of trying to first sell the mop and then stave off those interested in taking advantage of her success. And so, opening thoughts. Let's go with Davey first.
This is a mess. This movie is an absolute mess.
Mess. Jay Money.
I don't know if I go so far as to call it a mess. I'm probably going to be in the middle. I'm going to just presume that I'm in the middle. So go for it, JB.
Well, I mean, I was going to do a one-word thing, and I was going to say uneven. So I might be closer to Davy Joe than you might think. So let's start there, because when I say the word uneven, I think I'm very specifically referring to tone, and I want to explain this a little bit because this is a little bit about David O. Russell's career. That for a lot of his career, I feel like he is doing some mixing. He's trying to blend this comedic tone and surrealistic comedy and comedic tone with some dramatic elements. And here's a scene from The Fighter, and like a lot of people like The Fighter, I'm sure you guys do too. I do not, and I feel like it was a tone issue for me. And here's an example of these all the women that were part of the family in The Fighter that were very, very funny, but not necessarily in the right. It didn't feel like to me the right movie. Like the level of comedy felt like almost from a different movie, from like something Melissa McCarthy might be in. In fact, there's a very similar family dynamic in the Heat with Sandra Bullock. But David Russell has managed to, and like other examples of movies where I feel like he's trying to mix this tone, but is unsuccessful. Include I Heart Huckabees. I don't think he nailed that as much, and also Silver Linings Playbook is another one I don't like as much. However, Perfect Balance, I thought American Hustle nailed it, from this tonal point of view, and also partially because American Hustle didn't take itself too seriously, and then I thought Three Kings is actually really, really strong in that regard. But it's a recurring theme for me in David O. Russell's career, and Joy's an example of a film I feel like he missed on it. Like it was the comedic elements detracted from the impact of the story. So that's where I'm starting, and I want to see how you guys feel about that. I was sort of presenting that and see what you guys say about that. Let's start with J Money because he was in the middle and he was very vague. So let's start with him. See if he has more to say.
I mean, I was presuming I would be in the middle. It turns out I guess I'm not necessarily in the middle. I guess I'm more on the edge with you guys. I think that.
Did you not find room for your candles, by the way?
Yeah, unfortunately, I could not squeeze them in. Oh, you know what? I'm just gonna, for no apparent reason, float my candlestick by. Oh, look, there it goes. It's like ghost. Hope it doesn't happen again next time, but it probably will for some reason. I can't really explain.
All right, continue. Tone.
Tone, yeah, I actually agree with you for the most part about David O. Russell's work in general. I would flip my preferences with Silver Linings Playbook and American Hustle. I think that Silver Linings actually ended up working better just because, for me, it's almost fully a comedic film that's punctuated by some of the seriousness of the characters behind it, but ultimately I found myself laughing at it most of the time. Whereas the other works that we talked about, and I actually never saw The Fighter, so I can't really talk to it, but I saw everything else we've talked about, felt like, to me, it caught me off guard with the comedy, or it caught me off guard with the drama. And I think with this movie, as I was watching it, the thing that struck me the most is that it felt like the loosest and most kind of like, I don't want to say drunkest, like the most carefree David O. Russell has been with this kind of work. It felt, especially compared to the other work,
almost overconfident in a way.
Well, you know what the thing is? At first I thought overconfident, or not necessarily overconfident. At first I thought just like not paying attention, and then I thought, why is he being so heavy-handed with everything? Because there were quite a few very heavy-handed moments.
Yeah, and I have a very specific thought behind that. But go ahead.
But ultimately, when I walked out of it, what I think I came to the conclusion is that he was making a self-aware movie. I think that David O. Russell was making a movie about David O. Russell, and a lot of it came down to.
So when you say self-aware, you don't necessarily meaning like the movie itself, aware of itself. You're suggesting that it's somehow autobiographical, or
no? I'm saying it is kind of aware of himself, or it's aware of his style, because I do think that it was in some ways making light, or at least having fun with his own style in the way that people.
Are you saying that it's a good thing or a bad thing?
For me, it was not an incredibly successful movie. I didn't have a bad time there. I think that it was. I have a problem with biopics in general. I also think that it was going in way too many directions, and there was a lot of unsatisfying kind of conclusions. But that's further down the road. I just think ultimately I was trying to figure out most of the way through the movie whether or not I thought it was actually a bad movie, or whether or not I thought he was, very self-awarely kind of making some tongue-in-cheek jokes about himself. And the reason I'm going to say about that, the reason I'm going to say he was kind of being self-aware, is purely because of him sort of using the soap opera as a framing device in general. I think that was something that he did very consciously to say, like, hey, look at the story I'm telling you. We'll get into this more later.
You're jumping all over the place. Do you want to go down that road, or do you want to sort of keep on? I'm fine with either way, but
let's go down whatever road you pick next, because ultimately I'm just trying to say.
I wanted Davy Joe to opine about this tone thing.
Yeah, let's have Davy Joe walk into this as well.
All right, so we'll get back to the soap opera thing. I have a specific note about that too. I have specific notes about a lot of the things that you talked about, but I don't want to get too far off track. Like, I'm going to let Davy Joe pipe in. Go ahead, Davy.
Well, I mean, the tone thing is my only real problem. I don't mind a movie jumping back and forth between drama and comedy, but I thought that it definitely didn't pick a lane. And when it was swerving around, I mean, at some points I think they were trying to kind of make it like almost like a mafia kind of feel or something. It was definitely some.
Surely not. If they were doing a mafia thing, it was in a tongue-in-cheek sort of way.
Yeah, that's fine, but I didn't know whether I was supposed to be laughing at that or not. It just wasn't. It wasn't. I mean, my other problems kind of don't address the tone issue, but there's so many other things that I never really focused on that very much.
Okay, well, let's see if we get to that tone issue. Now I think you talked about the biopic element and the heavy-handedness element. I think there's a couple things going on there, and for me, the heavy-handedness sort of revolved around the family dynamic in and of itself. And my theory is that the goal was to over-accentuate this family as the obstacles really around her, that thing that is keeping her down, in order to raise the stakes. And also, I think I also think that the tone was meant to differentiate itself from other biopics. I mean, I think he's looking at this as a biopic the way that you mentioned it, and he's like, how do I make this different? Well, I'll just bring some of my, some of the family dynamic from The Fighter, what I did there, and some of the family dynamic I did in Flirting with Disaster, and sort of like bring those comedic elements in to lighten this and give the story a little something more. But the result is, I mean, like, the family feels two-dimensional to me, and therefore not realistic, and it lessens the impact. So that's my theory. J Money, you've got something to say.
Well, I was going to say that I think that the family and pretty much almost all the side characters in this movie in general feel like caricatures. They feel kind of broad stroke.
That's sort of what I meant by two-dimensional. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. But that's also why I was saying that I feel like he very consciously pulled in elements of soap opera around this to sort of let the audience know this is kind of what I'm playing in.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like all the characters were outsized in a way and very emotional in a way that really fit into that idea.
So the scenes from the soap opera, which reminded me of the Twin Peaks soap opera. I don't know if you guys remember Twin Peaks. Invitation to Love, I think, was the name of that. And they got old soap stars. Susan Lucci was on it. Donna, slipping my mind, Donna something. Donna Mills. Anyway, so they're all in these scenes here, and you think that was sort of a wink and a nod to say, I know what I'm doing. Like, this is over the top for a reason. Like, that's what you feel like the place of the soap opera was.
That's how I'm trying to rationalize why how this movie worked. I think that it was sort of like a guidepost for the audience to try to understand where to put this, this level of drama. Because, as you were saying, everybody seemed so two-dimensional, I guess, to your point, just too baseless.
You think the concept here is like reality is stranger than fiction type thing? Is that like to compare and contrast Joy's journey to the soap opera?
I think that I think ultimately he wanted to have fun with his friends, and I think that they picked a project where he could have fun and sort of stretch how much fun they would have on set and how much fun they would have doing the project itself without taking it too seriously.
Well, I mean, also bear in mind that, and I didn't have a note on this, and I hadn't decided exactly what that, if this meant anything, but the project originated not with David O. Russell. It was an existing script by Annie Momolo, who, I'm pronouncing her name wrong, Momolo, I'm sorry, Annie, who she had a script on her own, and she's one of the co-writers of Bridesmaids. So if that gives you any insight into this, so it started with her, and then David O. Russell came in. With that said, all this family dynamic feels very David O. Russell, independent of her.
Yes.
But that's just me. Davey, did we hit closer to what your issues were with our talk about the soap opera and the family dynamic?
The family dynamic and something that you mentioned with the two-dimensional characters, I think that hits it right on the head. Especially, interesting, in the character that I felt the least connection with happened to be the narrator of the film. It made no sense to me. I had no connection with this character, and it just seemed strange that she was narrating the film to me.
Oh, I actually had a theory about that halfway through the film, which we can talk about, or if you think it's
what is it?
Go ahead.
I thought that she was a ghost. I thought she was a ghost that was going to be narrating this. Because halfway through the film, I started watching whether or not her character on screen was actually interacting with anyone else in the scenes, and she never was. Huh. And she also never changed. Like, her personality was
except Joy.
What's that?
She did
except for Joy. But so I thought that this was Joy's, projecting her spirit, basically, or projecting her imaginary friend, basically telling her things.
Unfortunately, I don't buy that, but I mean, it's a fun thought.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, for me, I was actually upset when it turned out not to be true, because I'm like, that's a cheap trick. I mean, she was such a straightforward, flatlined, unchangeable character. She looked the same, she dressed the same, she had the same exact voice all the way through the movie, and it didn't really make sense for her to be played that straight for me.
And a waste of Diane Ladd, incidentally. But yes, well, I mean, I have a note about narration as well. It's alongside my note about soap opera because, I mean, first of all, narration voiceover to me is like it's one of those bells that automatic buzz goes off. Like I do not like it, and that's the only problem I have with American Beauty is this slight narration in the front and the end. But, otherwise, it's a fabulous film. Every once in a while, narration is really good, and I think the best example of use of narration in a film, aside from film noirs, would be Goodfellas, because the narration is not necessarily telling you exactly what's on screen. It's not, you know what I mean? Like, it's a different sort of guide. So that's a good example of great narration. However, but so like right away, as soon as the narrator started, I was out. You know, like I was on my way out, and it just kept going. And the narration did not add to anything. The narration was not a Goodfellas style of narration. I'm not saying the narration can never work. I'm saying it rarely works, and this is an example of where it doesn't work to me. So that was a big thing in terms of directing choices. So since we brought it up, directing choices, let's talk about the music. I thought the music choices were a little odd, guys. I mean, and I couldn't, like, I didn't have like a pen and paper with me. I couldn't write down pieces of music. But I remember, like, there's a funeral scene at one point where I thought the music choice was really odd. There was some montages where I thought the music didn't seem to match, and it was enough moments where the music wasn't matching what was going on in a traditional way. It seemed very, very specifically not matching in a way that I would expect, which doesn't necessarily make it bad. It was unique, but it didn't seem to gel. A, did you guys notice that? And B, how did you feel about it?
Well, it was really eclectic, and you could tell that he was. It was almost distracting how you could tell that he was trying to switch genres and keep it changing constantly. And I think it may actually play into your tone point where it changes. It just you can't get into a groove with this movie.
And maybe that's on purpose as well. I mean, I will say before J Money goes is. I feel like there's a couple kinds of movies that I don't, you know, like, I don't think any movie's very, very bad. If I'll start over. It's an accomplishment to get a movie made regardless. Like, I have a lot of respect. Obviously, I do this for a living, so I have a lot of respect when even like to finish a film is an accomplishment. It's easier for the David O. Russells of the world, I grant you, but it's an accomplishment, and I respect that. And I also respect the movies I respect less are the ones that are lazy and the ones that don't make choices and don't, you know, have the script go through enough drafts. Something like Home would be a good example of something that we talked about this year that just didn't work hard enough on the basic elements of storytelling. In this particular film, he's making all sorts of choices. And I often use this example when I'm talking about M. Night Shyamalan's work, because love him or hate him, he's constantly making choices, and I respect that. He's thinking about every detail and every element. So I respect that element of it. So it's just, in this case, I disagree with the choices. He had something very specific in mind. A lot of us don't seem to be on board with it. Is that fair?
Definitely. I mean, you can't call it lazy, that's for sure. I mean, it's...
Right, and that's my point, sort of my disclaimer. One choice that I thought was interesting that I did like, out of the three that I didn't, soap opera, music, and narration, I did not like. The one choice I thought was really interesting is, I'm going to call it temporal relations for now, but basically, until somebody says the time, 1995, it seemed like a very specific choice to make the era feel very nondescript to me. Did anybody else feel that, or am I just, you know, is it just my, you know, because I was looking for landmarks without necessarily people having to tell me what year it was, because I didn't have a real sense of Joey Manganiello's like true story. Like, I had a very vague sense. I didn't remember necessarily when the Miracle Mop was invented, and I wonder if this is just like, you know, me, or if it did feel like a specific choice to sort of keep it vague until they don't say 1995 until the very end when she's in Texas. What do you guys think?
I think just from looking at the cars and the TVs and stuff, I kind of got a sense of it. But yeah, I mean,
you got that specific 90s? You felt 90s? Because I didn't feel that necessarily, given that like their clothes or the houses, or like I didn't see that.
No, it's a good question. I kind of just pegged it to my childhood.
You're not that young, dude. Don't even play.
Well, I graduated high school in '96, so.
I mean that describes David in general.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's the alarm. So I'm going to give us time for one more topic, and let's see how we feel about this. Now, the person I took to this movie hated it even more than we did, and like she really hated it. But she's a tough cookie. She's hard to please. I want to talk about, is this? I feel like the intent of this film was sort of as a female empowerment message. Is this successful in that regard, and is this a feminist film?
I think so. I mean, I think in that regard, it shows a strong female lead and someone who, you know, basically had to overcome a lot of sexism to get where she got. So yeah, I think so.
You know, I left the theater kind of thinking about that myself. I guess I felt like that was certainly, I think, David O. Russell's intent. I think his intent was to try to create a film that was, you know, around this strong female character. But then because of everything that sort of, you know, happened with the production of it, like everything we talked about with all the kind of two-dimensional characters and some of the heavy-handedness of it, the rest of that seemed to rob the impact of that idea for me. So
it's so funny how we're so in agreement on this show. Like, yeah, I feel the exact same way.
Like, you know, at the end of the day, I feel like he made a movie that's superficially about sort of celebrating a feminist character or a strong female character, but it doesn't really actually do it, you know. Especially since there was so much drama in the actual story of Joy that apparently they left out. You know, there were so many things that they sort of cover in the prologue and the epilogue that were way more interesting to me, frankly, than what actually happened.
And it's like you know, he diluted the good stuff to inject his comedic touch, and it seemed false.
You know, I would say the story itself felt so contrived in a sense, just because it felt so unrealistic that I couldn't get behind the real power of what she was doing. So
the story is incomprehensible. I don't understand what happened. I don't understand. They did a patent search and they found a foreign patent, but then
we're getting legal now. We're getting legal.
But they're paying the person, the factory. None of that made any sense to me. The math didn't make any sense. She needed to get $200,000, and then they sold 50,000 units at $20. That's $1 million. But then they're filing bankruptcy, which apparently you can do immediately. Just like, oh, here's some paper, sign this. It's bankruptcy time.
Well, I think time was condensed. I'll give him that.
It was crazy, and I was puzzled and almost angry at how it didn't make any sense.
Was there actual legal loopholes? I had that note to ask you. I might have skipped it though, but I mean, like, the patent thing made sense to me because someone had a patent that resembled her patent, what she wanted to accomplish.
Sure.
So they basically paid him royalties.
No, but they didn't pay him. They paid somebody else.
So middleman.
Why?
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense. And then they said
he was acting as a representative, right?
Of the person in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
I guess, but then.
Well, I mean, I think that was to show. I mean, like, look, I have my issues with the movie, but I think that was to show her lack of business acumen. Was it?
Okay, so they're having this explained to them by an attorney later in the movie, and they say, all right, well, our attorney made a mistake, and at no point does this other attorney say, you know, you have a malpractice claim, even though they. I mean, like, jeez, like.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I did have a note. I didn't think we'd get to it, but I did want to ask you if you had a legal perspective on it. So it's good to know.
I mean, of course, if you get bad advice and it costs you your whole company, you've got a claim there. Someone should.
So here's my challenge to you, Davey, because we're running out of time. Why don't you look up the actual case if you can, because you got nothing to do at work. Why don't you look up the actual case, and on the next time or next sound off. You can tell us about how the case matches with the script.
It doesn't sound like it ever went to litigation. It sounds like it settled. So.
But I mean, like, you can Wikipedia what happened.
We can try, but I don't know that there's any filing or anything.
Well, I'm not asking you to look at court records. I'm just asking you to Google.
Okay, all right. We'll look.
Speaking of next time, next up for review, we're getting I don't know what this movie's about, but Chloe Grace Moretz is in it. I think it might be an alien invasion movie. I think I saw a trailer. I heard her on the radio today advertising, but she said nothing about the movie. She's like, come see my movie based on a book. It's called The Fifth Wave. I'm Chloe Grace Moretz. Bye. That's the movie we're going to talk about next time. And
that's all I need.
Next time, we believe, is going to be January 27th, which I think is a Thursday night at 8 p.m. And
the Wednesday.
Wait, what's that?
I think it's actually a Wednesday.
Oh, okay, you're right.
Confirmed.
Wednesday, January 27th at 8 p.m. I apologize.
Accepted.
Wednesday, January 27th, 8 p.m. I'm not apologizing to you, apologizing to them. Wednesday, January 27th, 8 p.m., Fifth Wave. But next, in about 5 minutes, we're going to do our indie spotlight of the evening. I'm yelling. I get in trouble for this. I'm yelling. I'm going to do an indie spotlight of the evening, and it's the documentary I'm Still Here about Joaquin Phoenix and his attempt to be a rapper. We're going to talk about that. So it'll be our last 2010 indie, and that's coming up next on our indie spotlight here in the No Name Cinema Society. We'll see you in a few minutes.